Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 784. Character Assassination. Ma'am Willis glanced at Dwayne Dantes and said with a smile, completely unfazed, "Your past, and your experiences in Desi Bay and the southern continent, are more interesting than any novel I'd read. It makes me feel like having a similar experience of my own. Of course, they're just real-life stories that have been tweaked. It's all thanks to Anderson Hood, a hunter that goes everywhere." As Klein cast his gaze on a tiny butter cake, he chuckled. "It's because those are only the interesting ones. There are many that I'd rather not be reminded of." After that simple statement, he began enjoying the dessert. However, when Ma'am Willis and the other ladies heard that, they were somehow reminded of a best-selling novel. A man with a story. To them, Dwayne Dantes was such a man. Although he looked like a placid lake, there was more deep down. Hidden there were more pleasant surprises and plenty of pain. The banquet ended 20 minutes to 10. A number of gentlemen and ladies went to the card room to play 2 hours of Texas Hold'em, while the remaining men headed for the activity room to have a chat. They didn't bar women from joining, but as it was inevitable for them to broach on sexual matters while smoking, no women joined them. They either circled the piano at the first story and listened to and sang along with the performer, or they grouped up to play chess. Klein chose to head to the activity room on the second story. Private conversations with a few people had helped him speed up his admission into the circle. After entering the room, he observed the environment, and went straight for the windows to open them. Then, he pulled a nearby high-backed chair to sit down. Just as he did this, he saw the banquet's host, Portland Moment, laugh with a pipe in hand. "Men often need some space for themselves." His voice was sonorous, and he had a big build. He was an elder in his 60s with a ruddy complexion and rather thick hair despite being all white. His facial features were the most classic features of a Loanese man with nothing that stood out. "Yes, men have to take note of their image when the ladies are around. We have to be considerate about their thoughts. I've already wanted to kiss this an hour ago." Hazel's father, member of Parliament, mocked, took out a gorgeous silver box, taking out a cigar from inside. The other men in the activity room did the same as pipes or cigarettes appeared in their hands as though they were pulling off a magic trick. As the flames flickered, wisps of smoke began to billow, filling the room as though the smog from yesteryear hadn't dispersed. After enjoying it for a few seconds with his eyes closed, Portland Moment looked to the guests by the window and asked, "Dwayne, do you not smoke?" Klein clenched his fist and placed it to his mouth, coughing slightly as he said, "I have yet to recover. The doctor advised me not to smoke for the time being." To be frank, he was almost choking. Thankfully, he had smartly chosen a seat by the window. This group smoked like chimneys. Klein curled his right index finger and rubbed against his nostrils. He had the urge to use the beyonder powers of a magician to create an invisible air pipe that extended outside to draw in fresh air so as to escape the harm of second-hand smoke. But considering how there might be beyonders hiding amongst these men, he wisely gave up on the idea. Portland Moment laughed upon hearing that. "I heard from Bishop Electra that it's not without reason that you were sick. You lack a wife." This professor was a believer of the god of steam and machinery, but his wife was a believer of the Evernight goddess. Therefore, they had taken up residence in Beauclun Street near St. Samuel Cathedral. He often had bishops visiting him and having exchanges. Is he mocking me for thinking about women despite being sick? I really couldn't tell that Bishop Electra is actually a man who likes spreading gossip. It's all Rhodes's fault. Klein lampooned and shook his head with a smile. "I place great importance on marriage. I'd rather remain single if there's no one suitable." At this moment, the high-ranking employee of the Backlund Municipal Office, Mr. Willis, spewed out smoke and said, "Actually, I envy Dwayne's single status. It allows him to be able to pursue any kind of woman that he likes." He had deliberated, enunciated, "Any kind," causing ambiguous laughter to sound out. The matter of Dwayne Dantes's wide preferences and him never rejecting any charming woman has already spread across the street. Klein held back his right hand to prevent himself from subconsciously rubbing his temples. He felt that the deep, dignified, handsome, gregarious new tycoon's image was undergoing a subtle change. He first suspected that it was the loudmouth, Bishop Electra, that had spread the news, but later believed that it was butler Walter who had proactively gotten the servants to spread the gossip. This was because a nearly flawless, charming gentleman would often be unknowingly ostracized by members of the same sex in a circle. But when a blemish surfaced, with a topic that could be used in jest, it made it easier for him to build closer ties. Klein wasn't angry about such treatment. Instead, he deliberately gave a wry smile in a rather gentlemanly manner. "That's why I have difficulty choosing, causing me to remain single to this day." "Ha!" Portland Moment and company laughed in unison. Member of Parliament Mock then said, "What you need is to be a little more decisive. A good marriage and a good family aids a man greatly." He stopped teasing him and gave serious advice. "From the looks of it, no matter which world you're in, you can't escape the fate of being pressured into marriage." Klein nodded gently and glanced out the window, taking in the night scenery of Portland Moment's garden. At this moment he saw a figure. It was Hazel Mocked, who was dressed in a black-green gown, following a trail going deeper into the garden, pausing from time to time to look around as though she was looking for something. Wasn't this lady playing the piano just now? Why would she suddenly be in the garden? When Klein retracted his gaze, Hazel's figure was blocked by flowers. When guests attend banquets or balls, leaving the hall to head into the garden isn't something impolite. After all, it's a very stylish habit to take a stroll under the moon and take in the flowery aroma of the night winds. However, this often implies a rendezvous. Who's Hazel rendezvousing with? No, it doesn't seem like it. No one that came today is truly her equal. Although she doesn't appear as arrogant after the fright she suffered in the sewers, making her occasionally look depressed, she still seems to belittle ordinary people deep down. She's dealing with the negative effects of the mystical item? That doesn't make sense. Entering a lounge or the washroom would be better than the garden since there's more privacy. Furthermore, back at the ball held at her place, she also went to the third story and not the garden. Klein eliminated the various impossibilities and finally had a theory. From the way Hazel is trying to sense or find something, she seems to have noticed some abnormality and plans to observe and deal with it up close. Does this also mean that there's some paranormal activity happening in Professor Portland Moment's house? If that's true, this professor or someone in his family isn't simple at all. The bishops of the St. Samuel Cathedral haven't realized anything despite them visiting often. A marauder's senses and observation skills in certain areas definitely stand out. Klein didn't have any thoughts of intervening in the situation outside. After all, something that Hazel could sense was definitely nothing too dangerous. Besides, St. Samuel Cathedral was nearby. If there were any hidden secrets, no one would attempt to escalate matters and would instead try to lay low. At this moment, Mocked finally calmed down from an untasteful joke and looked towards Portland Moment. "I heard you'll be leaving Backlund University?" Professor Portland Moment sucked at his pipe and said, "That's right. The Higher Education Commission wishes that I become the Chancellor of the reorganized Backlund University of Technology. Although a large amount of my wealth comes from metal alloys, what I'm best at is mechanical engineering. They've promised to build me a better laboratory there, and also provide me with more funding. At my age, having more autonomy and helpers is more important." Mr. Willis echoed with a smile. "And Backlund University will have a full-time professor spot empty up. Those senior associate professors that have been waiting for decades can finally have a chance." In Lone's tertiary education system, full-time professors weren't just a title, but also a post. It was equivalent to a dean, so there was only one. Backlund University of Technology. Klein smiled as he listened, keeping silent on matters he didn't know much about. In the garden, Hazel arrived in a dark and secluded corner. She had discovered that ants and other insects on the ground were gathering in an abnormal manner, and her spiritual perception felt that something was hidden here. This was innate to her sequence, and it had never failed in the past. Without any additional help, she could directly choose the precious items hidden among several sealed boxes. Of course, She wasn't able to distinguish what it was exactly. All she knew was that compared to the rest, what her spiritual perception told her was something definitely more valuable. Just like Mr. Dwayne Dante's. He definitely has extremely precious items on him. Hazel curled the corners of her lips as she cast her gaze at the soil, which looked a little loose. She sensed that copious amounts of spirituality were gathered underneath, thus attracting insects and souls. It's not a human body. It's some spirituality-equipped materials that have been used. They should have been thrown away in batches, but they were instead buried together, causing unnecessary changes. Hazel's eyes turned darker as she interpreted the situation underground based on the unhidden spirituality traits and changes. She tipped her chin slightly and looked back at the building. She believed that Portland Moment's family had at least one person with extraordinary powers. And if this problem in the garden wasn't resolved, the nearby houses would have paranormal activity in the coming days. Hazel retracted her gaze, extended her left hand, and aimed it at the soil. With a gentle grip, she slowly twisted her wrist. The gathered spirituality vanished as though it had been stolen by someone.